Hey there, welcome to this video series on songwriting. In this series, we've talked about not just writing a song, but writing a song, recording it, producing it, and mixing it inside a DAW. Now, previously, we've looked at how to write a song, how to record vocals, how to produce vocals, and things like song structure. But in this video, which is the final video, we're going to look at one of the most important processes, and that is the mix. One of my favorite things to do in the mix process is to be completely ruthless. So I've had a go at getting all of the instruments and putting as many instruments down in this track as I possibly can. So that's the beauty about songwriting and producing inside a DAW, is we can put a whole lot of different things and we can try a whole lot of different ideas in our track. But the mix process is where basically the final decision has to be made. Doesn't need to be there. And I go through track by track and I look at each part and I'm like, does that fill need to be there? Does that bass line need to be there? Does that keyboard part need to be there? How can I bring it in at the right moment so that it really impacts this part of the song? And it's not about impacting that part of the song in terms of making that part be the focus of the track. It's about how do I get all of these pieces to fit in together so that my track sounds complete. It sounds like there's continuity from the moment the track starts to the moment the track ends. And of course, it's about getting all of these parts to complement the main message, which is the vocal line and the story, which we're really telling as part of this singer-songwriter process. One of the most important concepts when it comes to mixing is to control everything that you see in front of you. And when I say control, I just mean have it set up so that there's no surprises in the mix and that you can control your workspace. So a good example of that is how I have everything set out in front of me. So I've got my two different types of drums here. I've got my electric kit that's in a folder. You can move things to a folder just by selecting the tracks you want to move and saying move selected tracks to a new folder. And that just means that because I've got a large track count, I can come down and quickly find anything that I want to work on. Okay, so everything, all of the instruments are in clearly marked and colorized folders. The other thing to remember is that you can set up different workflows for each sound or each audio track through the mixer. So that means that each of these individual tracks can either be sent to something like the stereo output. So you can see here, if I click on kit, this is going to a group track, which is a drum track. If I had it set to a stereo output, this would just go basically from this channel straight to my master output here. Okay, so no more processing. It'll just go from a channel straight into there. But because I have this set up to come through drum kick, this kick channel is going now to go through this channel. It's going to be processed through the EQ if I have it turned on and all of these effects. And then it's going to come through this group channel, which is the drum kick. That's what I've named down the bottom, and I can see any settings that I have here. So I've got a little bit of EQ, and then that is going through the stereo output. Okay, so there's a signal flow as it comes from the hard disk through the software and through the mixer and to the main output, which is what we hear in our studio monitors or our monitors at home or our headphones. Okay, so we can control how we see all of our individual channels, and we can control how these channels come through the mixer. And there's a reason why we do that. And that's basically to control the volume of it and also to basically control how effects are added to this sound as it comes through, which is basically deciding how we're going to process the sound. And we decide how we're going to process the sound because we want it to sound a particular way. So the audio as you hear it, as it's recorded, is never really how it sounds as it comes out of a mix. Take, for example, my bass track, the intro. So I wanted this to pop out. So check this out. It sounds pretty nasty, right? And that is not as it was recorded. So if I want to bypass these inserts, which I've got on it, which is really one of the reasons why it's sounding like that, we can hear how it's actually going to sound. And that's quite a beautiful sound. So why did I decide to dirty it up? And this is the whole concept, or one of the important concepts of mixing. It's because we want it to make an impact in that overall sonic picture that we're building. So let's now go and listen to it in context, because for me, as soon as this bass line was recorded, I went, yeah, that's actually a really important part of my intro. That is actually setting the tone for this whole track. Let's hear it in the actual track itself. That's without any processing, and let's go back now and let's turn this on. Just drop the volume a bit. So straight away, I've turned that bass line from something that's kind of underlying, it's something that's really nice and safe and secure, into this in-your-face, dirty, take this. From the moment someone plays a track, they are going to hear that bass line, and they're going to hear it crunchy, they're going to hear it dirty, and they're going to hear it popping out of the mix. And that is because I've done this to it. So first of all, I've added a compressor. And look, there's plenty of videos on all the plugins I'm going to show you today. So all I'm going to say about a compressor is that it's controlling the output. So it's not letting this bass get out of hand and pop out so that certain notes are louder than other notes. So it's bringing it through at a steady level. And this is how we control the sound. We put dynamics and compressors, limiters over the top of everything so that everything is brought back into a certain zone and it can't stand out or pop out in just one little moment in our mix. That's where it's really important. If you don't know what you're doing, use the presets. They're great. So the preset button's up here. You just click on it and you can see all of these presets that you can have a go with and try that to start with. Now I'm using one of my favorite plugins, the distortion plugin. It sounds terrible on its own in terms of, the context in this track. Let's bypass it. So in most of the Cubase plugins, you'll see this mix, and this mix defines how much of the plugin we're allowing into the overall sound as it passes through. So if I was to put that at 100%, it sounds way too gritty. But now I've got this awesome thing where I can just play and I can mix it in so that it's not too much and it's just enough. But always listen to things in context. So... I could boost the actual distortion right here just by moving this up and down. But I'm pretty happy with that. Now I'm going to introduce you to the most amazing and important plugin in any mix. This is a recent addition to Cubase, and it is the best thing since Velcro. I put it over everything. I'm not even really going to tell you what it does other than it's basically a multiband upwards and downwards compressor. So it can push things up, it can bring it down, you can add drive. These are frequency bands here. So we've got up to 3 if we want. So basically we can add a compression, we can add distortion, and we can gate over individual frequency bands. So imagine a picture split up into 3 from high to low. This is low, this is high. And it is amazing. If you don't know what it does, you can Google it. There's plenty of videos, but use these presets. They are freaking awesome. Use them as much as you can. Use it over everything. And what this is going to do is exactly what it says. It squashes things down into a place, into a smaller place. So it's bringing the lows up, it's bringing the loud parts down, and it's squashing it down into a band so that we can help it pop through in the mix. I spent years and years of my life trying to make a bass sound like a bass that came out of a cabinet when I was mixing and producing. That's not how it sounds when it's recorded. That's how it sounds when it's live on a stage, so that if you're sitting in the audience, you can feel it. But that's too much over a stereo and over our headphones. So what's really important is to squash this bass sound, depending on the style of music that you're listening to or you're producing, squash it down so that it makes sense in your mix. So I've spent a little bit of time on the bass, but these concepts relate to almost everything. And if we go back to my drum kit, I've got a kick here. And I've got a live kit, so an acoustic kick right here. And I've treated these exactly the same. This kick will also be squashed at some point. There's a squasher right there. So if I open this up, you can see I've got kick drum. So I'm using a preset, I'm just altering it. If I want, I can add some drive and I can gate it. And gating it means that there's no bleed from the other drums. Now, this is a separate video, but just check this out. There's an individual gate on my kick drum right here. That's what it sounds like without the gate on. The gate is closing off the rest of this track after the kick drum sounded. And once again, just using a preset and editing it. So presets are key. Okay, so we've controlled the low end. I've controlled the kick and I've controlled the bass. And that's almost, 10% of your mix right there. Because if your low end is out, if it's crazy, then you're fighting a losing battle because this low end takes up so much energy in our mix. It takes up more than we actually realize. And this is one really important thing right here. Low cuts. Always cut out everything below, anywhere between 50, your sub is around 60, just here. But if you cut everything below here, then that energy is gone from your mix. You don't need to worry about compressors and EQs and effects and all, reverbs, all of that kind of stuff, focusing that energy down here because this will take up far more energy than something up high. So control your low end. That's my first tip. Okay, now before I get too far into the mix, you need to have a think about the end product. So we're starting at the very beginning. We're starting at the kick drum. Now let's go to our stereo output. So I'm just going to click on this little button down here, inserts. If I go to my stereo output again, you can see that I've got all of these inserts. Let me bring it up here. It's a really neat way of being able to view our stereo output. Now these inserts are basically things that I put over my master channel. So I'm looking at everything in front of me and this is my production. This section right here, this is what you're going to hear in your ears. So this is really important. I'm going to turn all of these on whilst I'm playing the track. And I want you to just listen to your headphones and hear the difference each one of these inserts make. Wanna make it out alive. You're always the victim, I'm always the circumstance. You want me to believe I'm that man in the paper. So you're telling everybody there ain't nothing good about me. Most nights I stay up thinking, then I stop believing all the things you say about me. I know it ain't easy on you too. We gotta set ourselves free. Don't you wait, I'm never buying back. Okay, so there's our EQ, and there's a number of different EQ settings there. Remember, our low end's gone. We've put a low cut on there. So this is cut 48, cut 96. These will be how steep these cuts actually are. And the rest is basically just adding some tweaks. So this is high end. This is our sonic picture. So this is where we've got air. Down here is where we've got our sub. And then through here, we've got low mids. And then this is our harsher area. And quite often, we'll put a little notch right here. See this notch? And this means, well, actually, I'll play it. You can hear what it means. You're always the victim, I'm always the circumstance. You want me to believe I'm that man in the paper. So you're telling everybody there ain't nothing good about me. Most nights I stay up. So this notch means that we can go and find troubling frequencies up here, something maybe that's too harsh, and we can move it around until we find it, and then we can drop it. And you can see we've got a little keys down here, which shows us the actual note. So if there's a note that's sticking out against our track, because every track's in a key, then we can find it and we can bring it down. You can see there's another notch down here. And we can add these notches and we can change them on this amazing EQ called frequency. We can change bands from low shelf to peak to high shelf to notch. And as soon as we do that, then we can basically we can find these troubling frequencies and we can drop them out of our mix. Okay, so there's the frequency. Now I'm quickly going to go through the maximizer, which is kind of like a limiter, but it's bringing the soft stuff up and it's also limiting it so that it doesn't go over the specified threshold. So kind of like the squasher, just not as involved.
You're always the victim, I'm always the circumstance. You want me to believe I'm that man in the paper, so you're telling everybody there ain't nothing good about me.
So this is a really cool plugin to have a look at, and of course, once again, so many presets. Use a preset, find out what it does. Squasher, here we go. We've already had a look at this. I'm not going to explain it. I'm just going to hit play and you can hear it.
You're always the victim, I'm always the circumstance. You want me to believe I'm that man in the paper, so you're telling everybody there ain't nothing good about me. Most nights I stay up thinking, then I stop believing all the things you say about me. I know it ain't easy on you too. We gotta set ourselves free. Don't you wait, I'm never buying back in this game. Your reality is all bitterness and hate, and that don't say a thing about me. It's your life, I wish you all the love you can buy. I hope you find good reason to laugh and smile, so you don't have to talk about I'm not that exciting, there are better things to talk about. You're always a victim, I'm always a perpetrator. You want me to believe I'm the villain in the paper.
So you can see that I can almost have a hi-fi sound by moving this high end up, and more of a lo-fi sound by moving it down. Finally, I have the brick wall limiter. Now, the brick wall limiter basically says that nothing shall pass, like Gandalf, nothing shall come past this setting right here. Now, I don't need a whole lot of it in this track, but if you're making loud music, then you've got a few decisions to make. So just watch what happens when I turn it on. You may not hear it because it's just reducing it, but it's basically stopping anything that's coming through here from being too loud so that it's going to damage your ears or damage the system that it's been played on. Basically, we're controlling it. We're saying nothing comes past this point.
Feeling in the paper, you're telling everybody there ain't nothing good about me. Most nights I stay up thinking, then I stop.
And you can see this is the point here. Like if I bring this all the way down to here, then nothing's going to come past here. But it's going to sound terrible because we're reducing it so drastically. And of course, we're not just reducing it. Here we're saying, hey, get louder in the maximizer. And here we're saying, hey, not so loud, woo. And basically, my whole output channel now is a little bit messed up because of the settings that I showed you before. But this is pushing and this is reducing. So it's about finding a balance, making sure everything here has got some continuity and some flow. But hey, don't stress about it too much. The decision you have to make is whether you're going to mix with all of these inserts on, or even maybe just one of them on. Maybe you're not going to use all of them, but maybe the squash is maybe that's your gold dust. Who knows? So I've turned everything off other than the squasher. And of course, supervision I have on all the time on a second screen so that I can actually see what's going on in my mix.
You're always the victim, I'm always the circumstance. You want me to believe I'm that man in the paper, so you're telling everybody there ain't nothing good about me. Most nights I stay up thinking.
Let's go back and take a look at this mix. So my kick and my hats and everything in between is basically a plugin. It's not basically, it is a plugin. It's Backbone. And I've done a lot of mixing inside Backbone to control these different sounds that I'm using. So that's one thing to remember. A lot of what you do when you're songwriting and producing at the same time is mixing. So as you go along, you find a sound and you think, yeah, I like that. And straight away you start to think of the end picture. How is that kick going to sound in my mix? Well, I didn't like it when it came to the verse. So this is a verse coming up here.
Step away.
I just thought it sounded a bit too isolated and weak. So I went into Groove Agent and I added another kick. And now I can control the mix. So this one's a deeper kick, this one's a lighter kick. the snare, I haven't done much to. I've put a destroyer over the top of it, one of my favorite plugins again. So the destroyer is basically adding distortion over the top of this snare. So I'm adding crunch over the top of that snare. Why am I adding crunch? To help it find its own place in the mix. It's what it's all about, getting each individual part to find its own place in the mix and make a difference to that sonic picture, help build that sonic picture. And you can see exactly where each component is sitting just by clicking on this E button and having a look at the EQ. And you can see I've added some high end with the destroyer and I've dropped some high end.
You're always the victim, I'm always the circumstance. You want me to believe I'm that man in the paper.
So I thought that was too much. And of course, I haven't just listened to it on its own. I've listened to it with my acoustic snare that I'm using from the drum kit. Once again, I've got a gate. And as I move that threshold up, it's only capturing the snare. Have a listen. I love mixing because I like to come at it from a creative perspective. It's like, how can I not completely change what I've got in front of me, but how can I use all of these amazing, suite of creative tools to make things more interesting, to give things more of their own space? And I'm a terrible guitarist, and I've played, guitar on this track myself. And I'll give you some example of why it doesn't always matter if you're a terrible guitarist when it comes to editing and the whole mix. Let's look at this electric guitar cheesy line right here, and I'm going to bypass the inserts. Okay, almost anyone can play that. I promise you, you can learn to play that in about 5 minutes, even if you don't know how to play guitar. So that's just a simple line, which is doubled up here somewhere, doubled right here in my synth line. So, that's my intro hook apart from the bass line. How do I make it stand out? Well, let's solo it. Okay, I don't even think that's in tune. It's not perfectly in tune, which probably means my guitar's not set up. But hey, whatever, let's go with it. I'm just going to highlight it. I'm going to hit P on my computer keyboard, which loops. Well, it adds a left and right locator. And as soon as I hit the cycle on my computer keypad or down here, it's just going to cycle record this. So what I decided to do straight up was, of course, add a compressor, and the tube compressor adds a little bit of color. Probably something you're not going to hear necessarily over the YouTubes on your headphones, but you can add color by adding character and using drive. And once again, we can control the mix of this plugin to the overall sound as it passes through. So the most important thing is this is controlling my sound. It's not allowing my dodgy playing to get louder at any individual point. So let's hit play. VST amp rack we could use. Let's see what that's giving us. Probably nothing. I just put it on everything so that it's there. So I can use that to simulate a number of different amps and pedals. Now, my favorite distortion plugin. That sounds so dodgy, but have a listen to that in the mix now and tell me whether you can hear it more with that distortion plugin in. It is definitely helping that guitar poke through the mix. And I don't think too many people are going to listen to it at the level it's supposed to be and go, oh, wow, that sounds really dodgy. Because it's like, a part in an orchestra. It's just helping build this sonic picture. And it's helping this guitar poke through at the right frequency. Now, here's where I went full dodgy. How many people have said that put a chorus over a guitar in the last 20 years? Well, me. I'm putting my hand up right now, turning the studio chorus on, and this is where this guitar really comes into its own. And to me, that is the perfect, final touches to this intro, which has, it's kitschy, it's freaking cheesy, it's got a steel drum in there, and now it's got a chorus guitar. And that's what I'm aiming for. When you're happy with everything, you need to go back to your master settings and your master channel here and check that there's no volume issues. And then, of course, go through these insets again and experiment with different EQs if we're using frequency, different maximizer settings, different squasher settings, and of course make sure your brick wall limiter is doing its job. And you've got supervision there the whole way. You can leave that open on another screen as I do, or you can add it and minimize the window and just have it sitting somewhere in your project so that you can see it. So we can just bring that back down. And of course with supervision, you've got a number of different views. So you can decide what it is you really want to see there as you're either editing, mastering, or mixing. And there's plenty of videos on this online. One thing to remember when it comes to mixing is you're not instantly going to get it. No one instantly sits down in front of a microphone and learns to sing into a DAW, or no one instantly sits down and figures out how to write a song. Mixing is exactly the same. It takes practice. It's doing it over and over again, and it's learning every time you engage in this process. It's also about learning how to translate what you're hearing inside your mix environment, which could be a bedroom, it could be a project studio, it could be an amazing studio, which has, got sound treatment everywhere. But it's learning to take what you're hearing here and translating that into what other people are hearing on their streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple Music. And it's also about it sounding good in a car or on the radio or, on your home stereo. So there's a lot of things to consider, and the mix process is getting easier because we've got access to all of these different amazing plugins and of course all of these visual tools which we can use to analyze our mix. But it's also getting harder because we've got to think about all of these different, outputs. And we've got to think about how people are accessing our music and where they're actually listening to it. But like I said, just keep at it. And the more you do it, the more you understand the process and the better we all get at it. Thanks for taking the time to stop by and hang with me in this songwriting series. I've really enjoyed making the videos and I'd love to hear your tracks. So please give us the thumbs up if you've learned something and leave us comments. I want to know how you're being creative using Cubase or whatever DAW you're using, and I want to see you posting your music down here in the comments. Once again, thanks for coming and hanging. I'm going to catch you real soon.